The summer rain drummed against the windows of the luxury penthouse in downtown Chicago as Tara Johnson stood frozen, staring at her husband's phone. The screen glowed with intimate messages between James Miller, her husband of 2 years, rising star of Chicago's financial world, and Emily Parker, the beautiful young attorney recently hired by their firm. Tara's hands trembled, her mind refusing to process the explicit exchanges, the planned rendezvous, the cold calculations about when James could slip away from their home. July of 2015 was supposed to be the month Tara and James discussed starting a family, not the moment her marriage shattered into irreparable pieces. For nearly 10 minutes, she scrolled through months of deception messages dating back to when Emily had first joined Greenwood Capital the previous year. The betrayal wasn't just a momentary lapse. It was a calculated double life. When the front door finally opened, Tara didn't move from her position at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Chicago's glittering skyline. The lake beyond stretched dark and vast, a perfect mirror for the emptiness spreading inside her. She heard James drop his keys in the handcrafted ceramic bowl they'd bought in Barcelona, heard his casual greeting, the practiced normalcy of a skilled liar. Tara remained facing the window as storm clouds gathered over the city, her voice steadier than she felt as she confronted him about Emily. She held up his phone, which he'd carelessly left charging on the kitchen counter before leaving that morning. She hadn't been snooping. She'd needed to check their calendar for the charity gala next week. But Emily's message had appeared, exposing everything. The transformation in James's face happened in stages, first confusion, then shock, followed by a calculated assessment of his options. Not guilt, not remorse, just strategic recalibration. He attempted denial at first, reaching for the phone with practiced concern in his eyes. Tara pulled the device away, refusing to be manipulated. She pointed to the evidence, hundreds of messages, plans, hotel receipts spanning months while she had been desperately trying to save their marriage. Something hardened in James's expression then. The mask of concerned husband dissolved, revealing a coldness Tara had glimpsed before but always dismissed. He straightened his shoulders, no longer bothering with pretense. His admission came with a cruel twist, blaming her for his infidelity. He cited her late nights at the office, her involvement with charity committees, her perpetual exhaustion. The irony crushed her. Those late nights had been for projects he had assigned her. The exhaustion came from trying to meet his ever-shifting expectations. The committees were ones he had insisted she joined to enhance their social standing. Tara reminded him of her sacrifices, how she had rearranged her entire life to fit his, put her career aspirations on hold to support him. This was how he repaid her loyalty, by sleeping with the first ambitious attorney who flattered his ego. James laughed then, a sharp, dismissive sound that echoed in their expensively furnished room. He claimed credit for everything she was, everything she had. Before him, he reminded her, she had been just another junior analyst with a provincial accent and an off-the-rack wardrobe. Their home, her position at Greenwood Capital, her place in Chicago society, all existed because of him. The suggestion that their marriage had been some kind of favor he'd done her ignited something in Tara. Her voice rose despite efforts to maintain composure as she defended her achievements, positions earned through hard work and talent while he merely took credit. James checked his watch then, a gesture so dismissive that something broke inside Tara. His final blow came with casual cruelty. Emily made him happy in ways Tara never could. Emily was ambitious, energetic, understood his world. Tara had become, in his words, an obligation. The word hung in the air between them. Obligation. After 8 years together, first as colleagues, then as lovers, finally as husband and wife, she had been reduced to a duty, a checkbox, a burden. Tara felt something shift inside her. Not just heartbreak, but a fundamental realignment of her understanding of the past 8 years. The confrontation escalated as James's facade crumbled completely. He confessed that he and Emily had been planning a future together for months. He wanted a divorce immediately. The prenuptial agreement Tara had signed would ensure a clean break. He'd be generous with the settlement, but he expected her to move out within the week. Tara stood in stunned silence as James methodically dismantled their marriage, his tone as detached as if he were restructuring an underperforming investment. No remorse, no acknowledgement of their history, just clinical efficiency. He even had the paperwork ready, prenuptial provisions dog-eared, divorce papers preliminary drafted. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. This was a planned exit strategy. Rain lashed against the windows as thunder rolled across Chicago's skyline. In that moment, as James outlined the terms of their separation with the same precision he used for corporate acquisitions, Tara realized the full extent of her blindness. The signs had been there for months, increasingly separate lives, critical comments about her appearance, sudden password changes on their joint accounts, unexplained charges on credit cards. She had attributed it all to stress, to the pressure of his recent promotion. She had made excuses for him, even as he was methodically preparing to replace her. The luxury apartment that had once represented their success now felt like an elaborate stage set, beautiful but hollow, designed to impress others rather than create genuine happiness. The Italian leather furniture, the abstract art they'd purchased from galleries in New York and London, the panoramic views of a city that suddenly seemed cold and indifferent. All of it had been carefully selected to project an image. Now Tara saw it clearly. Their entire marriage had been choreographed around James's ambitions, his needs, his vision. As James continued outlining their separation, his phone chimed with another message from Emily. The sound cut through Tara's shock, crystallizing the humiliation of the moment. Here she was, being discarded from her own marriage while her replacement waited impatiently for her husband's return. 5 years earlier, in November of 2010, Tara Johnson had arrived in Chicago with nothing but ambition and determination. The promising Northwestern University finance graduate had left behind her small Georgia hometown to pursue opportunities in one of America's financial capitals. Beneath her professional demeanor lay both excitement and anxiety. She had graduated at the top of her class with multiple honors, but she was also the first in her family to pursue a career in high finance, venturing far beyond the familiar world of her teacher parents. Those early months in Chicago tested her resolve in unexpected ways. The city's brutal winter winds seemed to mirror the cold reception she received from potential employers. Despite her impressive academic credentials and a prestigious summer internship at Goldman Sachs during her junior year, Tara found the market still recovering from the 2008 financial crisis, with firms reluctant to hire new graduates without substantial connections. She lived in a tiny studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood, carefully budgeting her dwindling savings while submitting applications to every financial institution in the metropolitan area. Each evening, after another disappointing interview or shift at her temporary barista job, Tara would refine her approach. She adjusted her resume, researched companies more thoroughly, practiced eliminating her subtle Southern accent, and studied financial journals to ensure she could discuss market trends convincingly. Her apartment walls gradually became covered with sticky notes featuring industry terminology, company profiles, and motivational quotes. This methodical preparation reflected the same analytical skills that had distinguished her academically. After 3 months of persistent effort, her strategy paid off. In February of 2011, Greenwood Capital, a mid-sized investment firm with a growing reputation for aggressive but successful market plays, offered her a position as a junior analyst. The starting salary was lower than she had hoped, and the workload notorious, but Tara recognized the opportunity for what it was: a foot in the door of an industry known for rewarding performance over pedigree. From her first day, Tara distinguished herself through extraordinary dedication. She arrived at 6:30 each morning to prepare for the day's meetings, stayed long after conventional office hours, and volunteered for challenging projects that more established analysts avoided. Her analytical precision and attention to detail quickly gained notice, particularly her ability to identify overlooked patterns in market data that could indicate investment opportunities. It was during her 4th month at Greenwood that Tara first caught the attention of James Miller, a rising star who, at 32, already led the firm's most profitable division. With his Harvard Business School MBA, old money connections, and reputation for financial brilliance, James represented everything Tara aspired to professionally. When he selected her to join his elite team handling merger and acquisition analysis, the assignment was both a validation of her abilities and an unprecedented opportunity for accelerated advancement. Working directly with James transformed Tara's professional trajectory. He was demanding to the point of ruthlessness, frequently criticizing her work in cutting terms and setting nearly impossible deadlines. But he also recognized genuine talent, and as Tara consistently exceeded his expectations, he began entrusting her with increasingly significant responsibilities. By the end of her first year, she was conducting independent financial analyses and presenting directly to clients, roles typically reserved for analysts with several more years of experience. Their professional relationship gradually evolved as James recognized in Tara qualities beyond mere technical competence. She possessed an intuitive understanding of market psychology that complemented his more aggressive approach. While he focused on bold moves and quick profits, she excelled at identifying long-term patterns and potential risks, creating a balance that improved their team's overall performance. Their late nights analyzing data evolved into working dinners where they discussed strategy, and eventually into occasional social events where Tara met James's influential circle. The transition from professional respect to personal attraction occurred gradually. Then suddenly, a successful closing dinner for a particularly challenging acquisition in the summer of 2012 marked the shift. After the clients and other team members departed, James invited Tara for a celebratory drink at his exclusive club. Their conversation that evening extended beyond markets and deals to personal histories and aspirations. For the first time, James revealed glimpses of vulnerability beneath his polished exterior, the pressure of family expectations, the competitive drive that kept him working 80-hour weeks, the loneliness of success without someone who truly understood his world. For Tara, the attraction was complex. James's charisma, confidence, and undeniable success were appealing, but what truly drew her was his apparent recognition of her professional worth. Unlike other men she had dated who seemed intimidated by her intelligence or ambition, James seemed to value precisely these qualities. He offered entry into a world of influence and sophistication that had previously seemed unattainable to a girl from small-town Georgia. Their relationship represented not just personal connection but professional validation. Their courtship progressed with the same efficiency that characterized James's business dealings. By October of 2012, Tara had moved into his lakefront condominium with its breathtaking views and museum-quality art collection. The transition from her modest apartment to James's world of luxury was both exhilarating and disorienting. Suddenly, she had a closet larger than her former bedroom, filled with designer clothing James insisted she needed for her new position. Private car services replaced her morning commute on public transportation. Weekend trips to New York or Miami became routine occurrences. In January of 2013, during a surprise weekend in Paris, James proposed with a flawless 3-carat diamond ring. The proposal, like everything in their relationship, was both romantic and strategically timed, occurring after Tara had successfully led a complex analysis that saved one of James's major clients from a disastrous acquisition. The message was clear. They were not just lovers but partners, equally committed to professional excellence and mutual advancement. Their wedding in June of 2013 became the social event of the season, 200 carefully selected guests at a historic lakeside mansion, with the mayor, several state politicians, and numerous financial industry leaders in attendance. Tara's parents, still teaching at the same high school in Georgia, seemed out of place amid the wealth and connections on display, but they beamed with pride at their daughter's apparent success. The honeymoon, 3 weeks at a private villa in the Maldives, was a gift from Greenwood Capital's partners, acknowledging James's recent record-breaking quarter. For almost a year, Tara believed she had achieved the perfect balance. A thriving career alongside a husband who supported her professional ambitions while providing entry into Chicago's elite circles. She had been promoted to senior analyst, with James's recommendation carrying significant weight but her own performance providing undeniable justification. They were featured in Chicago Magazine's Power Couples issue, with the article praising their complementary financial approaches and shared commitment to excellence. The first cracks appeared subtly. James began commenting on Tara's wardrobe choices, suggesting certain colors or styles were more appropriate for her position. He critiqued her interactions at social events, providing detailed feedback on how she should engage with specific individuals. These comments were always framed as helpful guidance from someone with more experience navigating elite circles. And initially, Tara appreciated them as insights into a world still somewhat foreign to her. Gradually, however, the suggestions became requirements. James expected Tara to clear her schedule whenever he deemed an event important, regardless of her own work commitments. He began monitoring her expenses, questioning purchases he considered unnecessary or inappropriate. The boundaries between helpful advice and controlling behavior blurred, especially as James positioned his interventions as essential to their mutual advancement. His concern for their brand as a power couple justified increasingly intrusive oversight of her professional and personal choices. By the end of 2014, Tara found herself in an elegant prison of prosperity. Her professional achievements remained impressive. She had developed a reputation throughout Chicago's financial community for exceptional analytical skills, but increasingly, these successes were attributed to James's mentorship rather than her own abilities. At home, she had adapted to James's preferences in everything from evening routines to vacation destinations, rationalizing each accommodation as an investment in their shared future. When Emily Parker joined Greenwood Capital in early 2015 as legal counsel for the M&A division, Tara initially welcomed her. Emily's crisp efficiency and legal expertise strengthened their team's capabilities, and her presence meant Tara was no longer the only woman in senior meetings. But she soon noticed how James's attention shifted during presentations when Emily spoke, how their professional consultations extended beyond normal hours, how casual touches lingered slightly longer than necessary. Tara dismissed her concerns, focusing instead on the prestigious Richardson account that James had finally allowed her to lead independently. The project required extensive research and client meetings, often keeping her at the office until late evening. She didn't realize that her absorption in this professional opportunity, ironically, one that James had encouraged, was creating the perfect cover for his growing relationship with Emily. While Tara analyzed financial projections late into the night, James and Emily were developing more than just working relationship. The discovery of their affair in July of 2015 didn't just end Tara's marriage. It shattered her understanding of the past 8 years. Every promotion, every opportunity, every seeming validation of her worth now appeared in a different light. Had her professional advancement been genuine recognition of her talent, or merely James creating a suitable partner for his social ambitions? Had he ever valued her for herself, or only for how she enhanced his image? As thunder crashed outside their penthouse window and James coldly outlined their impending divorce, Tara Johnson faced not just the end of a marriage but an existential crisis. The identity she had built over nearly a decade, successful financial analyst, half of Chicago's most envied power couple, embodiment of the American dream of meritocratic achievement, suddenly seemed a carefully constructed illusion. At 34, with her personal and professional lives inextricably entangled with the man now discarding her, Tara faced the daunting prospect of rebuilding not just her life, but her very sense of self. The wedding of Tara and James was the event that financial circles in Chicago talked about for weeks. The elegant ceremony, held in June of 2013 at a historic mansion overlooking Lake Michigan, featured 200 meticulously selected guests, exquisite catering, and a string quartet that played classical music as Tara walked down the aisle in a custom-designed gown. Her parents, modest teachers from Georgia, felt somewhat out of place amidst the wealth and luxury, but were genuinely happy for their daughter. The newlyweds spent their honeymoon on a private villa in the Maldives, a gift from the Greenwood Capital Partners to James for successfully closing a major deal that had brought in millions in fees for the firm. After the wedding, Tara and James moved into a spacious townhouse in Chicago's prestigious Gold Coast neighborhood. Their new home was a showcase of modern elegance, high ceilings, designer furniture, a smart home system that controlled everything from lighting to security, and a collection of contemporary art adorning the walls. James insisted on hiring a renowned interior designer to outfit the house. He wanted their home to match his status, to be a place where they could entertain important clients and colleagues. Though Tara had some input on the design, The final decisions were largely made by James and the designer, who shared a vision of sophisticated urban luxury that sometimes felt impersonal to Tara. Initially, Tara enjoyed her new life. She continued working at Greenwood Capital, now as a senior analyst, and took pleasure in advancing her career. She had earned her promotion through hard work and exceptional performance, though she couldn't help noticing that being James Miller's wife hadn't hurt her professional trajectory. In the evenings, she and James often attended cultural events, charity galas, and business dinners. They were considered the perfect power couple in their circle, successful, attractive, and destined for ever greater achievements. However, as the months passed, Tara began to notice subtle changes in their relationship. James, always dominant and self-assured, became increasingly controlling. At first, it manifested in small ways: comments about her clothing choices, advice on how to behave at corporate events, remarks about her manner of speaking with certain people. He framed these as helpful guidance, concern for her career advancement and their joint image. Given his experience and success in the financial world, Tara initially accepted his explanations and adjusted her behavior accordingly. By the summer of 2014, James's control had extended to most aspects of Tara's life. He insisted that their finances be combined and began to closely monitor her spending, questioning purchases he deemed unnecessary or inappropriate. He interfered with her friendships, particularly those with people who weren't part of their social circle, suggesting that some of her old college friends or former colleagues were no longer suitable companions for a woman of her position. He expected her to be available by phone at all times and to provide detailed accounts of her plans and movements when they weren't together. Perhaps most troubling was how James began to limit Tara's professional autonomy. He offered unsolicited advice on her projects, sometimes going over her head to speak with her superiors about her work. He discouraged her from pursuing certain opportunities at the firm that might have required travel or additional hours, claiming that it would put too much strain on their marriage. When she was passed over for a project lead role that would have been a significant step in her career, she suspected James had intervened behind the scenes, though he denied it when confronted. By the end of 2014, Tara felt she was suffocating in the relationship. Her once vibrant, independent personality seemed to be fading beside James's domineering presence. At work, she still showed initiative, decisiveness, and creative problem-solving abilities, but at home, she transformed into a shadow of herself, cautious, constantly checking whether her behavior would meet with her husband's approval, walking on eggshells to avoid his criticism. The situation worsened when James began suggesting that Tara should leave her job entirely. His promotion to partner at Greenwood Capital had significantly increased his wealth, and he argued that there was no financial need for her to continue working. Instead, he proposed that she focus on maintaining their home, organizing social events and charity work, all the traditional activities of wives of successful financiers. For Tara, who had always defined herself primarily as a professional, this was unacceptable, but she found herself lacking the strength for open confrontation. In the spring of 2015, a new figure entered their lives. Emily Parker, a young and ambitious lawyer whom Greenwood Capital hired to structure particularly complex deals. Emily was intelligent, energetic, and straightforward, qualities that James had always valued. He began spending more time with her, frequently mentioning her name in conversations, expressing admiration for her professionalism. Tara noticed changes in her husband's behavior. He became distant, irritable, often staying at the office until late at night. In July of 2015, Tara accidentally saw messages on James's phone that left no doubt that he was having an affair with Emily. The confrontation was inevitable. James did not deny the infidelity. Instead, he turned the situation around, accusing Tara of becoming distant, boring, and unaccommodating, claiming that she didn't support him as a wife of a man in his position should. He stated that Emily understood him better, shared his ambitions, and complimented him professionally. Tara was devastated. Despite all the problems in their relationship, she loved James, believed in their marriage, and had hoped that the situation would improve over time. Now her world was crumbling. She suggested marriage counseling, but James refused, stating that he had already made his decision. He wanted a divorce. The divorce process was swift and ruthless. James engaged the best attorneys in Chicago, who aggressively protected his interests. Although Tara technically had rights to a significant portion of their joint property, the prenuptial agreement she had signed before the wedding, without carefully reading the legal details, completely trusting James, severely limited her options. Moreover, James used his influence in Chicago's financial world to complicate Tara's professional life. Greenwood Capital was not the only company where he had connections. When Tara began looking for a new job, she discovered that doors at many financial organizations were closed to her. No one told her directly that it was because of James, but she understood that rumors and unofficial conversations were having their effect. By the end of 2015, the divorce was finalized. Tara received a settlement that would seem significant to an ordinary person but was a drop in the ocean compared to James's fortune. She vacated their shared home and moved into a modest apartment in the Wicker Park neighborhood. James was already openly dating Emily, and they frequently appeared together at social events that James and Tara used to attend as a couple. Photos of the happy couple appeared on social media and occasionally in local press covering the city's financial elite. For Tara, a period of deep crisis began. She had lost not only her husband and familiar lifestyle, but also her professional identity. Despite an excellent resume and work experience, she couldn't find a position matching her qualifications. Many employers feared conflict with the influential James Miller, while others, learning about her past, offered positions significantly below her level of expertise. The financial world of Chicago, which had once embraced her as James Miller's protégé and later his wife, now seemed to have no place for her as an independent professional. In March of 2016, after months of unsuccessful job searching in Chicago's financial sector, Tara decided to change direction. She had always had an interest in education, dating back to her childhood when both her parents were teachers. She applied for a position as a financial programs coordinator at a nonprofit organization called Chance for the Future, which helped children from disadvantaged neighborhoods gain access to quality education. The salary was significantly lower than what she had earned at Greenwood Capital, but the work offered a sense of purpose and meaning that she desperately needed after months of rejection and self-doubt. Chance for the Future was headquartered in a converted warehouse in one of Chicago's transitioning neighborhoods. The office space was nothing like the sleek, marble-floored environment of Greenwood Capital. Instead of designer furniture and abstract art, there were functional desks, inspirational posters, and walls covered with children's artwork. The casual dress code and collaborative atmosphere were a stark contrast to the competitive, hierarchical structure Tara had become accustomed to in the financial world. At Chance for the Future, Tara met Marcus Washington, the founder and executive director of the organization. Marcus had grown up in one of Chicago's poorest neighborhoods but had managed to secure a scholarship to attend a prestigious university and had dedicated his life to giving the same chance to other children. He was the complete opposite of James, modest, sincere, deeply passionate about his work, and unconcerned with external symbols of success. Where James had been meticulously groomed and dressed in custom-tailored suits, Marcus favored casual clothing and kept his office door open to any staff member or student who needed his attention. Initially, Tara's relationship with Marcus was strictly professional. She used her financial expertise to improve the organization's resource management, develop donor attraction strategies, and optimize expenses. Marcus valued her contributions and gradually began trusting her with more responsible projects. He appreciated her ability to translate complex financial concepts into actionable plans that could benefit the children they served. The work at Chance for the Future was healing for Tara. For the first time since her divorce, she felt truly valued for her skills and knowledge, not for her appearance or social connections. She found purpose in applying her financial expertise to help create opportunities for children who reminded her of herself, ambitious young people who just needed a chance to prove themselves. Each success story, each child who improved their grades or gained confidence in their abilities, gave Tara a sense of accomplishment that was different from but more meaningful than closing a multimillion-dollar deal. In August of 2016, Tara's healing progress suffered a setback when she accidentally came across an announcement that James and Emily were engaged. The wedding was planned for spring of 2017 and promised to be even more lavish than James's wedding to Tara. This news, which she stumbled upon while browsing a society news website, hit her harder than she expected. She thought she had moved beyond James, but learning about his upcoming marriage triggered a wave of pain and disappointment that she couldn't ignore. That evening, for the first time since the divorce, Tara allowed herself to cry, releasing the accumulated emotions. She felt not only the pain of betrayal but also anger at herself for still caring about James's life. The next day at work, Marcus noticed her red eyes and unusually subdued demeanor. When he gently inquired if everything was all right, Tara surprised herself by confiding in him, briefly sharing the story of her marriage and divorce. Instead of awkwardness or perfunctory sympathy, Marcus showed genuine understanding. He shared his own experience of a difficult divorce several years ago, the period of loneliness and uncertainty he had endured, and how he had eventually found his way forward. This conversation was the first time they spoke not just about work but about personal matters, creating a new dimension to their relationship. The autumn of 2016 was a period of slow but steady healing for Tara. Her work at Chance for the Future continued to provide fulfillment and purpose. The organization was growing, securing new grants and expanding its programs to more schools in underserved areas of Chicago. Tara's financial background proved invaluable in managing this growth responsibly, ensuring that resources were allocated efficiently and transparently. Her friendship with Marcus deepened. They began spending time together outside of work, visiting exhibitions at the Art Institute, attending community concerts in Millennium Park, or simply walking along the lakefront, talking for hours. Marcus showed Tara parts of Chicago she had never experienced during her years in the financial sector: vibrant neighborhood festivals, small community theaters, family-owned restaurants with authentic cuisine from around the world. Through these experiences, Tara began to see the city not just as a financial hub but as a rich tapestry of communities and cultures. As winter approached, Tara realized that her feelings for Marcus had evolved beyond friendship. She was drawn to his integrity, his genuine passion for helping others, his quiet confidence that didn't need external validation. Unlike James, who had always viewed her as an accessory to his success, Marcus treated her as an equal partner, valuing her opinions and respecting her independence. The attraction was mutual, but both approached the situation with caution, mindful of their professional relationship and their respective emotional histories. In December of 2016, during the organization's holiday party, Marcus and Tara found themselves alone in his office, discussing plans for a new financial literacy program. The conversation naturally drifted to more personal topics, and in that moment, surrounded by the festive atmosphere and the shared sense of accomplishment for what they had achieved that year, they acknowledged their feelings for each other. Their first kiss was tentative, gentle, bearing none of the possessive quality that had characterized Tara's relationship with James. They decided to take things slowly, prioritizing their emotional health and the well-being of the organization. They kept their relationship discreet at work, maintaining professional boundaries during office hours. Outside of work, they gradually built a connection based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine enjoyment of each other's company. For Tara, this relationship was a revelation, a partnership where she felt seen and appreciated for who she truly was, not for what she represented or could provide. In February of 2017, when news of James and Emily's lavish wedding flooded the social media accounts of Chicago's financial community, Tara realized that she no longer felt the pain that had overwhelmed her months earlier. The life she had led with James now seemed foreign and distant to her, like a film she had watched rather than a reality she had lived. She had finally let go of the past and was ready to move forward. The spring of 2017 brought new developments for Chance for the Future. The organization received a major grant from the federal government to expand its educational programs, and Marcus asked Tara to lead a new initiative, teaching financial literacy to high school students and their parents. This was a responsible position that required not only financial knowledge but also pedagogical skills, the ability to work with diverse audiences, and the capacity to adapt complex information for people without specialized education. Tara embraced the challenge with enthusiasm. She developed a curriculum based on her experience in the financial sector but adapted for the needs of low-income families. Her course included practical budgeting skills, understanding credit and debt, basics of investing, education, and career planning. Particularly innovative was her approach to teaching parents and children together, creating an environment where financial knowledge became a family value. The program was tremendously successful. Families who completed Tara's training reported significant changes in their financial situation, reduced debt, increased savings, more mindful consumption. These success stories attracted the attention of local media, and in July of 2017, a major Chicago newspaper published an extensive article about Tara's program. The coverage drew the interest of city authorities and the philanthropic community, bringing additional recognition and support to Chance for the future. James, browsing the morning press in his office, unexpectedly saw his ex-wife's face in the article. He was surprised to learn about her current activities. Part of him felt dismissive. Working for a nonprofit with low income seemed to him a step down from a career in a prestigious financial company. But another part was intrigued and even slightly envious of the obvious satisfaction that radiated from Tara's face in the photograph accompanying the article. Meanwhile, Tara and Marcus's relationship continued to deepen. What had begun as friendship based on shared professional goals had evolved into a profound personal connection. Marcus, unlike James, valued Tara's independence and strength, admired her intelligence and professionalism, and supported her ideas. Their relationship developed slowly but deeply, rooted in genuine emotional connection rather than external glamour and social status. In October of 2017, Tara and Marcus decided to move in together. They chose a cozy home in the Hyde Park neighborhood, near the University of Chicago where Marcus occasionally lectured. The house was more modest than the one Tara had shared with James, but she discovered that she felt much more comfortable in this warm, welcoming space that they furnished together, taking into account each other's tastes and preferences. For the first time since leaving Georgia, Tara felt like she had found a true home. Spring of 2017 brought unexpected developments to Tara's life. Chance for the Future received a substantial grant from the federal government to expand its educational programs, and Marcus offered Tara leadership of a new initiative, teaching financial literacy to high school students and their parents from Chicago's underserved communities. This was a significant responsibility that required not just financial expertise, but also pedagogical skills, the ability to work with diverse audiences, and the capacity to translate complex concepts into accessible language. Tara embraced the challenge wholeheartedly. She dedicated weeks to developing a comprehensive curriculum that drew on her Wall Street experience but addressed the practical realities faced by low-income families. Her program included budgeting techniques, understanding credit scores and debt management, basic investment principles, guidance on financing education, and strategies for long-term financial planning. What made her approach particularly innovative was her insistence on including both parents and teenagers in the workshops, creating an environment where financial knowledge became a family value rather than isolated information. The classroom became a transformative space for Tara. Standing before a group of eager students and their parents in a high school gymnasium on Chicago's South Side was worlds away from presenting to wealthy investors in Greenwood Capital's sleek conference rooms. Yet she found this work infinitely more rewarding. When a single mother tearfully explained how Tara's advice had helped her create her first ever savings account, or when a teenager proudly announced his decision to pursue economics in college, Tara experienced a satisfaction that no closing bell or bonus announcement had ever provided. Her methodology was pragmatic and empathetic. Unlike traditional financial education that often remained theoretical, Tara incorporated real-life scenarios relevant to her students' experiences. She created simulation exercises where families practiced negotiating with creditors, comparing loan terms, or developing household budgets with limited resources. She invited local bank representatives to help participants open accounts, credit union officials to explain affordable lending options, and college financial aid advisors to demystify the application process. The classroom became a laboratory where abstract financial concepts transformed into practical tools for immediate use. By summer, word of the program's effectiveness had spread throughout Chicago's educational community. Families who completed Tara's workshops reported remarkable outcomes, reduced debt burdens, established emergency funds, more informed educational choices, and even small investment portfolios started with modest amounts. School principals began requesting the program, community organizations offered partnerships, and local politicians made appearances at graduation ceremonies. In July of 2017, the Chicago Tribune published a feature article about Tara's initiative, complete with success stories and photographs of her teaching. The newspaper article caught the attention of city officials and philanthropic leaders, but it also reached an unexpected reader. James Miller, skimming the business section in his corner office at Greenwood Capital, was startled to see his ex-wife's photograph. The accompanying story detailed her journey from Wall Street analyst to nonprofit educator and the impact of her financial literacy program on Chicago's disadvantaged communities. The article quoted students and parents praising her ability to make complex financial concepts accessible and relevant to their lives. James's reaction was complicated. His initial impulse was dismissive condescension. Teaching basic money management to poor families seemed a dramatic step down from structuring multi-million-dollar deals. Yet something in Tara's expression in the photograph gave him pause. She looked genuinely fulfilled in a way he couldn't remember seeing during their marriage. Her eyes held a purpose and satisfaction that all his expensive gifts and status symbols had never produced. For a brief moment, an uncomfortable question flickered through his mind. Had he actually understood what made Tara happy? Meanwhile, Tara's personal relationship with Marcus continued to evolve. What had begun as a professional collaboration based on shared commitment to education had developed into deep mutual respect and increasingly tender affection. Unlike her whirlwind romance with James, which had been fueled by ambition and superficial glamour, this connection grew slowly and organically, rooted in authentic values and genuine compatibility. Marcus represented everything James was not: thoughtful rather than domineering, collaborative instead of competitive, concerned with social impact over status. He listened when Tara spoke, not just waiting for his turn, but truly absorbing her perspectives. He celebrated her successes without trying to claim credit or control. Most significantly, he valued the qualities in Tara that James had attempted to suppress: her independence, her creative thinking, her determination to chart her own course. By early autumn, their relationship had deepened to the point where practical considerations emerged. Tara's lease was ending in October, and Marcus's two-bedroom apartment in Hyde Park was becoming too small for their joint book collections and work materials. After careful deliberation, they decided to take the next step and find a home together. They chose a charming Victorian house near the University of Chicago campus, where Marcus occasionally guest lectured. The house needed some renovation but had character, history, and potential, much like the relationship they were building. Moving in together was a profound step for Tara. Her previous cohabitation with James had essentially meant adapting to his pre-established lifestyle and preferences. This experience was entirely different. Every decision, from paint colors to furniture arrangement to garden planning, was genuinely collaborative. Marcus didn't just consult her. He valued her aesthetic sensibilities and practical insights. The resulting home reflected both of them. Marcus's collection of historical maps and photographs of Chicago neighborhoods, Tara's beloved books on finance and education, comfortable spaces for quiet reading, and open areas for hosting community gatherings. In October of 2017, Chance for the Future's financial literacy program received a prestigious National Education Award. The award ceremony was held at one of Chicago's most elegant hotels, attended by representatives from city government, business leadership, educational institutions, and philanthropic organizations. Tara, as the program director, was to accept the award and deliver a keynote address about the importance of financial education in creating pathways out of poverty. The evening of the ceremony, Tara stood backstage, reviewing her notes one final time. She had chosen to wear a simple but elegant midnight blue dress, professional and confident, but without the ostentatious designer labels that had dominated her wardrobe during her marriage. Marcus approached, straightening his tie nervously. This was a significant moment for the organization, and the audience included potential donors whose support could transform their capacity to serve Chicago's youth. "You'll be amazing," Marcus assured her, his faith in her abilities unwavering as always. Just speak from your heart like you do with the students. When Tara took the stage, the spotlight momentarily blinded her. As her eyes adjusted, she scanned the audience and froze briefly when she recognized a familiar face in the crowd. James Miller sat at a corporate-sponsored table near the front, with Emily beside him in designer evening wear. Their presence was not entirely surprising. Greenwood Capital supported various educational initiatives in Chicago, primarily for public relations purposes, but the unexpected proximity to her past sent a momentary tremor through Tara. She took a deep breath and began her address, speaking about the transformative power of financial knowledge, the dignity that comes with economic self-determination, and the right of every child to understand the systems that would shape their economic future. Tara found her rhythm. The audience responded with increasing enthusiasm as she shared stories of real families whose trajectories had changed through the program, the single father who had started a college fund for his daughters, the teenage entrepreneur who had launched a small business with principles learned in her class, the grandmother who had finally escaped predatory lending cycles that had trapped her for decades. From his seat in the audience, James watched with growing discomfort. The woman commanding the stage with such conviction and eloquence seemed worlds away from the wife he remembered, the one who had gradually dimmed her light to accommodate his ego, who had sought his approval for every decision. This Tara spoke with authentic authority derived not from wealth or position but from meaningful impact. Her words carried weight because they represented transformed lives, not just profitable transactions. More disconcertingly for James, she appeared genuinely happy. The forced smile he had grown accustomed to seeing at corporate events had been replaced by an expression of earned satisfaction. She moved with the confidence of someone who knew her worth extended beyond her appearance or her connections. Most striking was how the audience responded, not with the cautious deference his wealth typically commanded, but with genuine respect for her ideas and achievements. After the ceremony, James attempted to approach Tara at the reception. He maneuvered through clusters of educators and philanthropists, pulling Emily along by the elbow. But by the time he reached the spot where Tara had been standing, she was already engaged in animated conversation with the city's education commissioner, surrounded by program graduates eager to share their successes with potential supporters. James hesitated, suddenly uncertain of his purpose in seeking her out. What exactly had he intended to say? Congratulations? Reconciliation? Justification? The moment passed, and he retreated to his table, uncharacteristically quiet for the remainder of the evening. Tara had seen James approaching and had felt a momentary flutter of anxiety. But when he turned away without speaking, she realized something profound. His presence no longer affected her emotional equilibrium. The man who had once been the center of her universe, whose approval she had desperately sought, whose rejection had devastated her, that man now seemed like a character from a story she had read long ago. She felt neither anger nor longing, just a calm recognition of how far she had traveled from the person she had been during their marriage. Later that night, as Marcus drove them home through Chicago's glittering downtown, Tara rested her head on his shoulder and reflected on the symmetry of the evening. In the same city where she had once measured her worth by her proximity to power and wealth, she had now found validation through service and authenticity. The path had been circuitous and painful at times, but it had led her to a place of genuine fulfillment that her younger, status-conscious self could never have imagined. "You were incredible tonight," Marcus said, taking her hand as they waited at a traffic light beneath the elevated train tracks. "The way you connected the technical aspects of finance to human dignity. That's the magic that makes your program work." It was this understanding, this recognition of the deeper purpose behind her work, that crystallized for Tara the fundamental difference between her past and present relationships. James had valued her as an asset, an enhancement to his image. Marcus valued her mission, her impact, the essence of what drove her. The realization settled over her with warming clarity. She was exactly where she needed to be. In November, following the national recognition of the financial literacy program, Chance for the Future received inquiries from school districts across the country interested in implementing similar initiatives. The organization's board of directors proposed creating a dedicated division to manage program replication, with Tara as its director. This expansion would require additional funding, staff development, and strategic planning, challenges that energized rather than intimidated her. The financial acumen she had developed at Greenwood Capital now served a purpose she found deeply meaningful. By the end of 2017, Tara and Marcus had settled into their renovated Hyde Park home, creating not just a personal sanctuary but a gathering place for colleagues, students, and community members. Their Sunday brunches became informal strategy sessions where educators, local business owners, and program graduates exchanged ideas for community development. Their backyard garden hosted summer workshops on both financial planning and urban agriculture, two forms of self-sufficiency that complemented each other perfectly. As winter descended on Chicago, bringing its characteristic biting winds and early sunsets, Tara found herself reflecting on the remarkable transformation of her life over the past 2 years. She had moved from the golden cage of a prestigious but hollow existence to a life rich with purpose and authentic connection. The financial security she had once prized above all else now seemed merely a tool for creating genuine impact rather than an end in itself. And in Marcus, she had found not a status symbol, but a true partner who amplified her strengths and supported her growth. On New Year's Eve, watching fireworks over Lake Michigan from their front porch, bundled against the cold, Tara and Marcus discussed their hopes for 2018. Their plans: expanding the financial literacy program to more communities, renovating the third floor of their home into a proper office space, possibly fostering a teenage student who needed stable housing to complete high school, reflected values they genuinely shared. Tara realized that for the first time since leaving her parents' home in Georgia, she felt truly aligned with her own moral compass. The external markers of success that had once driven her no longer determined her choices. Instead, she navigated by deeper questions. Does this work matter? Am I using my talents effectively? Am I contributing to a more equitable world? The answers brought a peace that all her previous achievements had never provided. December of 2017 brought new challenges. The Chicago city government, impressed by the success of the financial literacy program, offered Chance for the Future substantial funding to expand the program citywide. This was an enormous opportunity for the organization but also a tremendous responsibility. Tara and Marcus found themselves at the center of intensive negotiations with city officials, educational sector partners, and potential sponsors. The stakes were high. Successful expansion could transform thousands of lives, but any missteps would damage not only the organization's reputation but also the trust of the communities they served. The proposed expansion required Chance for the Future to hire additional staff, develop standardized training materials while maintaining program quality, and create evaluation metrics that would satisfy government requirements without losing sight of human impact. Tara's financial background proved invaluable as she developed detailed budgets and implementation timelines. Marcus focused on community engagement, ensuring that expansion plans respected neighborhood identities and involved local leadership. Their complementary skills created a balanced approach that impressed city officials and community advocates alike. As Tara navigated these professional challenges, a storm was brewing in Chicago's financial world. In early January of 2018, Greenwood Capital became the focus of a federal investigation regarding possible financial manipulation in several major deals. The firm's name appeared in business publications with alarming frequency, usually accompanied by terms like alleged fraud, regulatory violations, and possible criminal charges. James Miller, as one of the leading partners of the company, was mentioned often in news reports. Though direct accusations against him had not yet been made, his reputation and status in the financial community were severely compromised. The scandal escalated when federal agents raided Greenwood Capital's offices in mid-January, seizing documents and electronic records. Financial news outlets ran dramatic footage of FBI agents carrying boxes from the gleaming downtown skyscraper that housed the firm. Former clients began filing lawsuits, the company's stock plummeted, and rumors of imminent arrests circulated throughout Chicago's business district. The once prestigious firm now faced not just financial penalties but potential criminal prosecutions. Emily, whose career as a lawyer was closely tied to the financial sector, began distancing herself from her husband, concerned that the scandal would taint her professional reputation as well. Their marriage, based more on mutual advantage than genuine affection, began to fracture under the pressure of external circumstances. Emily increasingly spent evenings at her law firm, claiming urgent work, while James faced the investigation largely alone. Tara followed news of the scandal with mixed feelings. On one hand, she couldn't help feeling a certain vindication seeing the downfall of the man who had so callously dismissed her and their marriage. On the other hand, she had genuinely moved beyond desiring revenge and hoped that James was not directly involved in illegal activities. The financial world she had once inhabited now seemed distant and somewhat surreal compared to the meaningful work that currently filled her days. In late January, as negotiations with city authorities about the expansion of the financial literacy program were reaching their final stages, Tara received an unexpected call from James. His voice sounded strained, lacking the confident authority she remembered. He requested a meeting, claiming it was important for both of them. After some hesitation, Tara agreed to see him at a neutral location, a coffee shop near the chance for the future office. The meeting was tense. James looked exhausted. Even aged, the investigation was clearly taking its toll. He explained that federal agents were interested in several deals that Greenwood Capital had conducted during the period when she still worked at the company. Some of these deals she had personally analyzed. James didn't directly ask her to provide false testimony, but he implied that her statements could help him if she correctly remembered certain details. Tara was outraged. She made it clear that she would not lie for him, that if she was called to testify, she would tell only the truth. James reacted with a mixture of anger and desperation. He reminded her of the years they had spent together, how he had helped her build her career, how despite everything, they had once loved each other. Then the conversation took an even more troubling turn. James mentioned that he knew about chance for the future's negotiations with city authorities, and that he still had connections that could influence the outcome of these negotiations, positively or negatively. Though he phrased it carefully, the implication was clear. If Tara didn't help him with the investigation, he might cause problems for the organization's expansion plans. Tara left the meeting feeling angry and concerned. She didn't want secrets between herself and Marcus, especially ones that could affect the organization's future, so she told him about James's implied threat. Marcus was worried but supported Tara's decision not to give in to pressure. They agreed to be completely transparent with city officials about the potential conflict of interest to protect Chance for the future's reputation. In February, Tara indeed received a subpoena from federal investigators. They questioned her for several hours about the deals she had worked on at Greenwood Capital. True to her principles, she told everything she knew, including some questionable practices she had witnessed. The investigators were particularly interested in a series of international transactions that had occurred just before she left the company. Transactions that now appeared to involve shell corporations and offshore accounts. After her testimony, Tara felt both relieved and anxious. She had done the right thing, but she worried about possible repercussions from James. She knew how vindictive he could be when crossed, and his veiled threat about interfering with the city funding loomed in her mind. For the next several days, she checked in regularly with city officials, relieved to find that the negotiations were proceeding normally. However, James was not done trying to influence her. In early March, he sent an expensive gift to her home, a designer watch that must have cost thousands of dollars, accompanied by a note reminiscing about better times and suggesting they meet again to resolve misunderstandings. Tara immediately returned the gift with a firmly worded message stating that she would not be swayed by presents or nostalgic appeals, and that all future communication should go through proper legal channels. James's desperation escalated as the federal investigation tightened around Greenwood Capital. In mid-March, one of the junior partners was arrested and charged with securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. News reports suggested he was cooperating with authorities and providing information about the firm's senior leadership. The pressure on James intensified, and his behavior became increasingly erratic. One evening in late March, after Tara and Marcus had finished a planning session for the program expansion, they returned to their car to find a flat tire. As Marcus changed it, Tara noticed a business card tucked under the windshield wiper. It was from a private investigator. When she turned it over, a handwritten note read, Miller is having you watched. Be careful. The revelation was chilling. James was apparently monitoring her movements, perhaps looking for leverage or seeking information about her testimony to federal authorities. Marcus insisted they report this to the FBI agents handling the Greenwood Capital case. The agents took the matter seriously, advising Tara and Marcus to be vigilant about their surroundings and documenting any further suspicious activities. They also suggested varying their routines and checking their electronic devices for possible security breaches. What had been a financial investigation now had troubling personal implications for Tara's safety and privacy. Despite these pressures, Tara remained focused on the expansion of the financial literacy program. By early April, the City Council had approved the funding, and Chance for the Future began the process of hiring additional instructors and securing classroom spaces in schools across Chicago. Tara insisted that the program maintain its core principles: practical, accessible financial education that empowered families rather than simply transmitting abstract knowledge. The training of new instructors was particularly important to Tara. She developed a comprehensive curriculum that went beyond financial content to include teaching methodologies, cultural sensitivity, and trauma-informed approaches to education. Many of the new hires came from the same communities they would serve, bringing valuable perspective but sometimes limited financial background. Tara created a mentoring system pairing experienced financial professionals with community educators to create teaching teams that combined technical knowledge with cultural competence. As April progressed, the Greenwood Capital investigation reached a critical phase. Federal prosecutors announced charges against 3 senior partners, including embezzlement, market manipulation, and conspiracy to commit fraud. James was not among those charged in this initial round, but media speculation suggested more indictments were forthcoming. Emily filed for separation, moving out of their penthouse apartment and issuing a statement through her law firm distancing herself from any knowledge of improper activities at Greenwood Capital. On the last day of April, as Tara was conducting a training session for new program instructors, she received an urgent call from the FBI agents handling the case. They informed her that James had attempted to access her personal records from various financial institutions using forged authorization documents. The attempt had been flagged by security systems, and James now faced additional potential charges for identity fraud on top of the financial crimes under investigation. The agents wanted to know if Tara had experienced any other concerning behavior from James that she hadn't previously reported. This latest development was deeply disturbing. James's actions had moved beyond professional retaliation into potential criminal behavior targeted directly at her. Tara agreed to increased security measures suggested by the authorities, including temporary surveillance of her home and workplace. Marcus was outraged when he learned of James's latest attempt to harm Tara, offering to put their expansion plans on hold if she needed time away from Chicago. But Tara refused to let James's desperate actions derail the important work they were doing. May brought both challenges and validation. The first expanded financial literacy classes began in 20 schools across Chicago, with preliminary feedback showing enthusiastic responses from both students and parents. Local news outlets ran positive stories about the program's growth, often featuring Tara as the curriculum's creator and vision behind the expansion. This public attention, while beneficial for the organization, made Tara uncomfortable given the ongoing situation with James. She worried that her increased visibility might provoke him further. These concerns proved justified when, in mid-May, James made one final attempt to intimidate her. He approached Tara in the parking garage of Chance for the Future's office building one evening as she was leaving work. His appearance was shocking, disheveled, unshaven, with none of the polished presence that had once defined him. When he began speaking, his voice alternated between pleading and threatening, suggesting that he still had the power to make life difficult for her if she continued cooperating with federal investigators. Tara remained calm, activating the recording function on her phone as Marcus had insisted she do if James ever approached her again. She firmly told James that he needed to leave immediately and that this interaction violated the advice of both their legal representatives. When he refused to move away from her car, she walked back toward the building, where security cameras would record any further confrontation. James followed for a few steps, then seemed to realize the potential consequences of his behavior and abruptly departed. The recording of this encounter was immediately provided to the FBI and became part of the mounting evidence against James. 2 days later, federal agents arrested him at his attorney's office. The charges were extensive: securities fraud, wire fraud, obstruction of justice, witness intimidation, and identity theft. News of his arrest dominated Chicago's business publications, with financial analysts dissecting the spectacular fall of a man once considered among the city's most successful investment bankers. For Tara, James's arrest brought complicated emotions. There was undeniable relief that his harassment would end, but also a certain sadness for the waste of talent and potential. The ambitious young financial analyst she had first met, with his sharp intellect and drive to succeed, had allowed greed and ego to corrupt his judgment to the point of criminal behavior. It was a cautionary tale about the dangers of valuing status and wealth above integrity and genuine connection. As May turned to June, Tara gradually allowed herself to refocus fully on the work that had become her passion. The expanded financial literacy program was showing promising early results, with participating families reporting increased confidence in managing household finances and making long-term financial plans. Several banks had approached Chance for the Future about partnerships to provide specialized financial products for program graduates, including matched savings accounts and low-fee banking services. In the midst of these professional successes, Tara and Marcus's relationship continued to deepen. The challenges they had weathered together, from the stresses of program expansion to the threats from James, had strengthened their bond. Unlike her marriage to James, which had been built on ambition and external validation, this partnership was founded on shared values, mutual respect, and genuine care for each other's well-being. One warm evening in late June, as they sat on the porch of their Hyde Park home watching fireflies illuminate the garden, Marcus took Tara's hand and asked if she had thought about making their partnership more formal. Though not a traditional proposal, the question held all the sincerity and deep consideration that characterized their relationship. Tara didn't answer immediately, taking time to reflect on the journey that had brought her to this moment, from ambitious financial analyst to disillusioned trophy wife to fulfilled educator finding purpose in helping others achieve financial security. After a thoughtful pause, she turned to Marcus with certainty in her eyes. The path forward was clear, not because society expected it or because it represented another achievement to check off a list, but because it aligned with her authentic self and deepest values. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them beside someone who valued her strength rather than seeking to control it, who amplified her voice rather than silencing it, who saw her fully and loved what he saw. In that moment of clarity, her answer was simple but profound: yes. In March of 2018, the federal investigation into Greenwood Capital reached its climax. James Miller, along with 4 other senior partners, faced a comprehensive indictment including charges of securities fraud, wire fraud, market manipulation, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and witness intimidation. The case had grown from an investigation of specific suspicious transactions to an exposé of a culture of corruption that had permeated the once prestigious firm. Federal prosecutors described a pattern of deception that had defrauded investors of hundreds of millions of dollars over nearly a decade. Emily filed for divorce immediately after James's arraignment, publicly distancing herself from his actions and cooperating with authorities to protect her own legal standing. In court filings, she claimed to have been unaware of the criminal activities and portrayed herself as another victim of James's deception. The high-powered attorney who had once been attracted to James's ambition and success now characterized those same qualities as pathological drive and moral bankruptcy. Chicago's social circles buzzed with the spectacular collapse of what had appeared to be the perfect power couple. The criminal proceedings against James and his colleagues dominated financial news throughout the spring. Tara was called to testify in April, providing detailed information about specific transactions she had worked on during her time at Greenwood Capital and conversations she had overheard that now appeared incriminating in light of the full investigation. Despite attempts by James's defense team to discredit her testimony by suggesting personal animus due to their divorce, her account was corroborated by documentary evidence and the testimony of other former employees. In the courtroom, Tara maintained her composure even under aggressive cross-examination. The woman who took the stand bore little resemblance to the intimidated ex-wife James had tried to manipulate months earlier. She spoke with clarity and precision, neither embellishing nor minimizing what she had witnessed. When James's attorney attempted to suggest that her current work in nonprofit education indicated a bias against the financial sector, Tara calmly responded that she still believed in the positive potential of financial systems when operated with integrity and transparency, values she now taught to her students. Throughout this challenging period, Marcus provided unwavering support. He attended court sessions when his schedule permitted, adjusted organizational responsibilities to accommodate Tara's court appearances, and created space for her to process the emotional complexity of participating in her ex-husband's prosecution. His steady presence and unshakable belief in her helped Tara navigate what could have been a devastating reopening of old wounds. Instead, she found the experience oddly healing, a formal closing of a chapter in her life that had once seemed likely to define her entire story. By early summer, the criminal case was building toward what legal analysts predicted would be guilty verdicts on most counts. Several junior partners had accepted plea deals in exchange for testimony against the senior leadership, providing damning details of how clients had been systematically deceived and regulatory requirements circumvented. James, seeing the mounting evidence against him, began exploring plea options of his own, hoping to avoid the maximum sentences that could effectively result in life imprisonment given his age. While the legal drama continued to unfold, Tara remained focused on the expansion of Chance for the Future's financial literacy program. By June, the initiative had been implemented in 35 schools across Chicago, reaching more than 4,000 students and their families. Early evaluation data showed promising results, increased savings rates among participating families, more applications for legitimate financial aid for higher education, and decreased utilization of predatory lending services in neighborhoods where the program operated. The success of the program attracted attention beyond Chicago. In July, representatives from the U.S. Department of Education visited to observe classes and discuss the curriculum with Tara and her team. The federal officials were particularly impressed by the program's holistic approach, which addressed not just technical financial knowledge but also the psychological and social factors that influenced financial decision-making in communities that had historically been excluded from mainstream financial services. Following this visit, Tara received an unexpected invitation to join a national task force on financial literacy education. The position would require regular travel to Washington, D.C. and collaboration with educators and policymakers from across the country. It represented an opportunity to shape national standards and potentially impact millions of students. When she brought the invitation to Marcus, his response reflected the foundation of their relationship, genuine excitement for her opportunity without concern for how it might affect his own position or their organization's structure. "This is exactly what your work deserves," he told her as they discussed the opportunity on a Sunday morning walk along Lake Michigan. "The model you've developed needs to reach beyond Chicago." Unlike James, who had seen her professional advancement as competition or as a reflection on his status, Marcus viewed Tara's success as a natural extension of her talents and dedication, something to be celebrated rather than controlled. In August, as Tara prepared for her first trip to Washington as part of the task force, James Miller accepted a plea agreement. In exchange for cooperation against remaining defendants and restitution to victims, he would serve 8 years in federal prison followed by 5 years of supervised release and would be permanently barred from the securities industry. The plea was covered extensively in financial publications, with many articles contrasting the spectacular rise and fall of a man once celebrated as a financial wunderkind. A week before she was scheduled to leave for Washington, Tara received a letter from James sent through his attorney. In it, he requested a meeting, a chance to speak directly before he began serving his sentence the following month. After discussing it with Marcus and reflecting on her own feelings, Tara agreed to one final conversation, choosing a public location and informing James's attorney that she would be accompanied by a colleague. They met at a small cafe in the Art Institute of Chicago, a neutral location filled with tourists and art students. James arrived under the supervision of his attorney, the electronic monitoring device on his ankle visible beneath his pant leg. The man who entered the cafe bore little resemblance to the commanding figure who had once dominated boardrooms and charity galas. He appeared older, diminished, the confident posture replaced by the defensive slouch of someone accustomed to hostility and judgment. Their conversation was brief but surprisingly genuine. James didn't apologize directly for his actions during their marriage or his attempts to manipulate her during the investigation. His pride still prevented such explicit acknowledgement of wrongdoing. But he did express something Tara had never expected, recognition of her current work and its value. "I've read about your program," he said, his voice lacking the condescending tone she remembered. What you're doing with those kids, teaching them how the system really works, giving them tools I didn't have growing up, it matters more than most of what I accomplished. Coming from a man who had measured worth exclusively in dollars and status, this acknowledgement represented a profound shift in perspective, even if it had come too late to save him from the consequences of his choices. As they parted, James awkwardly extended his hand. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Tara. I think maybe you already have." The comment contained recognition not just of her professional success but of her relationship with Marcus, which James had researched during his increasingly desperate attempts to find leverage against her. This final interaction lacked the emotional drama Tara might once have expected, no tearful reconciliation or bitter recriminations. Just the quiet closure of a chapter that had once seemed all-consuming but now represented just one segment of a much longer and richer narrative. In September, Tara traveled to Washington for her first meeting with the National Task Force on Financial Literacy. The group included educators from diverse backgrounds, economists specializing in household finance, representatives from community organizations, and federal officials responsible for educational policy. Her practical experience implementing financial education in underserved communities provided valuable perspective to theoretical discussions, while the broader policy context helped her envision how Chance for the Future's model could be adapted for different regional and demographic realities. During her time in Washington, Tara was invited to speak at a congressional briefing on educational approaches to economic mobility. Standing before an audience of legislators, staffers, and policy advocates, she shared stories of real students whose understanding of financial systems had transformed their families' economic trajectories. She emphasized that effective financial education went beyond teaching budget worksheets or explaining compound interest. It required addressing the systemic barriers and psychological factors that influenced financial behavior in communities that had experienced historical exclusion from economic opportunity. Her presentation resonated particularly with congressional representatives from districts similar to the Chicago neighborhoods where Chance for the Future operated. Several approached her afterward, inquiring about implementing similar programs in their communities and discussing potential legislative support for expanding such initiatives nationally. The policy world was new territory for Tara, but she found herself navigating it with unexpected confidence, translating between the technical language of finance, the practical realities of classroom education, and the political considerations of public funding. Upon returning to Chicago in October, Tara was greeted with exciting news. Chance for the Future had received a major grant from a national foundation to document their financial literacy curriculum and develop training materials for educators in other cities. The grant included funding for video production, comprehensive instructor manuals, and a digital platform to support implementation in diverse settings. This expansion represented a significant step toward national impact, with the potential to reach hundreds of thousands of students beyond Chicago. As fall progressed into winter, Tara and Marcus found themselves discussing not just professional expansion but personal futures as well. Their engagement, which had begun as a quiet commitment between them in June, now involved planning for a spring wedding. Unlike the lavish society event that had marked her marriage to James, they envisioned a celebration that reflected their shared values, meaningful rather than extravagant, focused on community rather than display, authentic rather than performative. They chose as their venue a restored community center in one of the neighborhoods where Chance for the Future operated, a building whose renovation had been a collaborative project involving local residents, artists, and businesses. The guest list included not just colleagues and family but also students and parents from their programs, community partners, and neighborhood leaders who had supported their work. In November, as wedding plans progressed, Tara received news that completed a circle in her life. The federal judge overseeing the Greenwood capital case had ordered that recovered funds from the fraud scheme be distributed not just to direct victims but also to organizations providing financial education in communities particularly vulnerable to predatory financial practices. Chance for the Future was named as one of the recipient organizations with a substantial grant designated specifically for expanding their work with elderly residents who had been targets of financial scams. The irony wasn't lost on Tara. Money that had been accumulated through financial exploitation would now fund education to prevent such exploitation. She saw in this development a powerful metaphor for her own journey. The knowledge and skills she had acquired in the high-pressure world of investment banking were now being redirected toward empowering those traditionally marginalized by financial systems. What had once been tools for accumulation had become instruments of liberation. December brought another significant transition. Marcus was invited to join a prestigious national education think tank focusing on equity issues in urban education. The position would require relocation to Washington, D.C., prompting serious conversations about their future. After thoughtful consideration of their personal and professional priorities, they decided to accept this opportunity. Tara's role on the federal task force already required regular travel to Washington, and the city offered rich possibilities for expanding their educational model nationally. The decision to leave Chicago was bittersweet. The city had witnessed both Tara's greatest professional triumphs and her most painful personal defeats. It had been the setting for her meteoric rise at Greenwood Capital, her devastating divorce from James, and her transformative work with Chance for the future. Chicago had shaped her identity in profound ways, challenging her values, testing her resilience, and ultimately clarifying her purpose. In January of 2019, Tara and Marcus began the process of relocating to Washington, D.C. They found a modest row house in a diverse neighborhood undergoing revitalization reminiscent of the Chicago communities where they had worked. The home needed renovation, peeling wallpaper, outdated plumbing, worn wooden floors, but possessed the solid bones and distinct character they both appreciated. Like their relationship, it represented not perfection but potential, not instant gratification but sustainable value. As they packed their Chicago home, sorting through possessions and determining what to bring to their new life, Tara came across a photograph she had forgotten existed. It showed her and James at a charity gala during the height of their marriage, she in an expensive designer gown, he in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, both wearing the practiced smiles of people performing success rather than experiencing joy. She studied the image, remembering how desperately she had worked to maintain that facade, how completely she had bought into the notion that external validation determined her worth. Tara didn't discard the photograph. Instead, she packed it carefully among her professional materials, a tangible reminder of the journey that had brought her to this moment. Not a source of pain or regret, but a milestone marking how far she had traveled from the woman who had measured her value through association with wealth and power. In February, just weeks before their planned wedding and final relocation to Washington, Tara received unexpected news that added another dimension to their future plans. A home pregnancy test, taken almost as an afterthought to explain recent fatigue and nausea, revealed that she was expecting. The timing was surprising. They had discussed having children but had planned to wait until they were settled in Washington and their new professional roles. The news transformed their approach to the coming changes. The wedding, already planned as an intimate community celebration, took on additional significance as the formal beginning of not just a partnership but a family. Their preparation for the move now included considerations of pediatricians, childcare options, and creating a nursery in their new home. What might have seemed like challenging complications in an earlier phase of Tara's life now represented welcome expansions of possibility. On a bright morning in early April, Tara and Marcus were married in the community center they had chosen months earlier. The ceremony reflected their shared values, meaningful traditions from both their families combined with contemporary elements that expressed their personal philosophy. In attendance were Tara's parents, still teaching in Georgia though approaching retirement, colleagues from Chance for the Future, students who had completed their financial literacy program, community partners, and friends who had supported them through the challenges of the past years. Conspicuously absent was any representation of Tara's former life in high finance. None of her colleagues from Greenwood Capital had maintained contact after her divorce from James, revealing the superficiality of connections based on proximity to power rather than authentic relationship. This absence didn't sadden Tara, it simply confirmed what she had gradually come to understand, that genuine community was built on shared values and mutual support, not transactional networking or strategic alliances. In her vows, Tara spoke of transformation, of how love at its best didn't diminish individual identity but expanded it, creating space for growth and discovery. She acknowledged the unlikely path that had brought her to this moment, including the painful chapters that had ultimately guided her toward greater authenticity. Marcus's vows emphasized commitment not just to Tara but to their shared vision of creating opportunity and fostering dignity through education, a mission that would now extend to their own child. The reception that followed was joyful but understated, featuring food prepared by a catering program that trained youth from underserved communities, music from local artists, and decorations created by students in an after-school arts program. Many guests commented on how the celebration reflected the couple's commitment to integrating their personal choices with their professional values, creating consistency between what they taught and how they lived. 2 weeks after the wedding, Tara and Marcus completed their move to Washington. Their new home, partially renovated but still requiring considerable work, became a metaphor for the life they were building together, a structure with historical integrity being thoughtfully adapted for contemporary purpose, maintaining what was valuable from the past while creating space for new possibilities. As spring blossomed in their new city, Tara began her expanded role with the Federal Task Force on Financial Literacy while continuing to guide the national expansion of the curriculum she had developed in Chicago. Her growing reputation as an innovator in financial education led to speaking engagements at universities, invitations to contribute to policy papers, and consulting requests from educational systems across the country. In these new professional settings, Tara occasionally encountered former colleagues from the financial sector, including some who had known her during her marriage to James. Many seemed surprised by her transformation from investment banker's wife to educational innovator, unable to reconcile their memory of the polished, somewhat reserved woman at corporate events with the passionate, articulate advocate before them. These encounters no longer triggered insecurity or defensiveness in Tara, they simply highlighted how completely she had integrated the various chapters of her life into a coherent whole. By summer, as Tara's pregnancy became visible, she found herself approaching her work with even greater urgency and purpose. The child growing within her represented a future she was actively helping to shape, not just through personal parenting but through systemic educational change. Each curriculum she developed, each policy she influenced, each educator she trained was contributing to a world where financial knowledge would be more equitably distributed, where economic systems would be more transparent and accessible to all participants. In July, an unexpected email arrived from Emily, James's ex-wife, who had reinvented herself as a corporate compliance consultant after their divorce. She was developing training programs for financial firms on ethical practice and regulatory adherence and wanted to discuss the possibility of incorporating elements of Tara's educational approach. The message contained a brief but sincere acknowledgement of past tensions and a recognition of Tara's expertise in making complex financial concepts accessible. After consideration, Tara agreed to a meeting. The conversation was professional rather than personal, focused on educational methodology rather than shared history. Yet there was a certain symmetry to this unexpected collaboration, two women whose lives had been disrupted by the same man, now applying the knowledge gained through those experiences toward preventing similar harm to others. It represented another instance of transformation, of difficulty redirected toward constructive purpose. As summer turned to fall and Tara's pregnancy entered its final months, she and Marcus completed the renovation of what would become their child's nursery. Unlike the professionally designed, fashion magazine-worthy nursery that James would have insisted upon, this room reflected thoughtful personal choices, walls painted by Marcus in a gentle green reminiscent of new growth. A rocking chair discovered at a neighborhood antique store and lovingly restored, bookshelves filled with diverse children's literature collected from their travels, a handmade quilt gifted by neighbors who had become friends. In preparing for their child's arrival, Tara applied the same principles she taught in her financial literacy classes: thoughtful planning, prioritization based on values rather than external pressures, critical evaluation of marketing messages about what new parents needed. The nursery, like their home and relationship, reflected intentional choices rather than conformity to expectations or demonstrations of status. October brought the publication of Tara's first book, Financial Dignity: Education as Economic Justice, which combined personal narrative with practical educational methodologies and policy recommendations. The book received attention not just in educational circles but in broader discussions of economic inequality and systemic change. Several reviewers noted the authenticity that distinguished Tara's approach, her understanding of both the technical complexities of financial systems and the lived realities of economic vulnerability, her ability to bridge academic theory and practical application. In November, as Washington prepared for winter, Tara and Marcus welcomed their daughter, Zora Mae Washington. The birth was uncomplicated, though longer than expected, with Marcus providing steady support throughout the process. When they first held their daughter, with her perfect miniature features and surprisingly strong grip, both experienced a profound shift in perspective, a reordering of priorities and deepening of purpose that no professional achievement had ever prompted. During her maternity leave, Tara found unexpected space for reflection amid the demanding rhythm of newborn care. Nursing Zora in the early morning hours, watching snow fall gently outside the nursery window, she contemplated the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. From ambitious financial analyst to trophy wife to educational innovator to mother, each role had expanded her understanding of value, success, and purpose. The greatest transformation, she realized, had been internal, a fundamental shift from measuring her worth through external validation to defining it through alignment with her deepest values. The painful dissolution of her marriage to James, which had once seemed like the end of her story, had actually been the beginning of a more authentic narrative. The financial knowledge she had acquired in pursuit of wealth and status had been redirected toward empowering others, creating a legacy far more meaningful than the accumulation of luxury or prestige. As 2019 drew to a close, Tara spent New Year's Eve quietly at home with Marcus and Zora, declining invitations to policy receptions and educational conferences. Sitting in the renovated living room of their row house, watching her husband gently rock their sleeping daughter, Tara felt a profound sense of integration. Her professional passion for educational equity, her personal commitment to authentic relationship, her newly discovered devotion to motherhood, these weren't competing priorities but complementary expressions of the same core values. The woman who had once defined success through acquisition and achievement now understood it as alignment, the congruence between internal values and external actions, between professional mission and personal choices. This alignment wasn't something she had found in the corner offices of Greenwood Capital or the luxury penthouses of Chicago's Gold Coast. It had emerged through loss and rediscovery, through painful endings and unexpected beginnings, through the courage to question inherited definitions of success and the vulnerability to create new ones. As midnight approached, Marcus gently placed Zora in her bassinet and rejoined Tara on the couch, taking her hand as they listened to distant celebrations marking the arrival of a new year. No champagne, no glamorous party, no designer evening wear, just genuine contentment, shared purpose, and the quiet recognition that true wealth consisted not in what one possessed but in what one contributed. The path forward would have its challenges, but Tara faced them with the calm confidence of a woman who had found her authentic voice and would never again allow it to be silenced.